All right, welcome into the Three Guys Talking Ball podcast. It is just a me from the Three Guys crew. We bring in another special guest, a recurring guest again. It is episode 59. It is the Joe Hague special edition preview with Big Deck's Barbecue's own Zach Willis, also co-host of the Benchwarmers Podcast. It is January 7th, 2023. Got to get used to saying 23 at this point, but we are. We'll manage at some point, so I'm 1 for 1 already. But like I said, it is NDSU versus SDSU this week. It's SDSU Hate Week. Bison play the Jacks for a chance to win their 10th national title at 12 p.m. on Mountain Time on Sunday on ABC. Zach, how we doing? How are things going?
Going well. As you mentioned, obviously, before we got in, a little bit of a shock here. I just wanted to clear it up for 2023. And, last time we lost to the Jackrabbits, I did have hair, so we had to try something else.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Hopefully that is the that helps. Are you a big superstitions guy?
Honestly, there's some. Not really, but there is like some weird stuff day to day that I'm just like, if it's not right, then I know the day isn't going to go well.
Okay. Are you able to share some of those?
Yeah, I mean, really, a lot of it has to do with my dogs. We just adopted another dog. His name's Lenny. What was that? In August. And I just know that if it's not going well in the morning, that the rest of the day is just going to be a wash. So I might as well just stay home and climb back into bed. But no, nothing too crazy. I wasn't like, I don't wash my socks or, stuff like that. Like there were some guys who, if they had a good game in a pair of socks or a pair of gloves, they're wearing that same socks, same gloves the entire season until something bad happened. And I didn't buy that. So I also didn't like to smell that bad.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I feel you there. It's always interesting how some of these guys, I don't know about like football. It's not as bad, but they say baseball, the guys have the worst superstitions.
Yeah, like I know, can't remember what I've seen it in, but like if they're using a bat and they're on a cold streak, they'll just go start it on fire and use a new bat. It's just like, you think that's going to help you? I think it's just more mental of like clearing it all out and, refocusing, having a blank slate ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's some that are just absolutely outrageous. I know there's one that like Jim Harbaugh always said was, you should never eat chicken before a game because it's a nervous bird.
It's a scared bird, yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
and I don't know. Maybe they did eat some chicken before the game on last Saturday, but
I didn't want to mention it.
No, It was. Well, your dad's a Michigan fan, correct?
Yeah. He watched that on his own. He was pretty confident. He's like, I think if we win this, we can beat Georgia, and they lost to TCU. So
yeah, I was the same. Everything leading up to that game, there was definitely reasons to feel confident, and then credit to TCU, they came out and played well, and see how they match up against Georgia.
The way they beat the brakes off of Ohio State, I really thought it was going to be like, okay, this might be the year that they get over the hump, and then TCU just has some grit to them. Max Duggan especially, like he just gets wailed on throughout the game, and then he just bounces right back up and he's ready to go.
Yeah, those guys did not quit, and TCU they played that game on their terms, and Michigan they fought back. I mean, it felt like in previous years, well, they wouldn't have gotten to that point in previous years, but where they would have gotten the doors blown off when they got down 3 scores, it would have been a 5-6 score game, but to their credit, they bounced back and another step.
They went down swinging, but I was talking to my co-host of the Benchwarmers, Quinn, about it, and I was just like, if TCU, is up 2 to 3 scores in the first half, I don't think that's a game Michigan wants to play. And I thought they needed to build that bubble to fight them off, and they somehow did it. But you have to have some reprieve in the fact that Ohio State lost too, like in heartbreaking fashion.
That made that Ohio State losing made that day a lot better, because that way I knew that those guys were not going to be able to win a national title. and I wouldn't have had to cheer for a team that just beat Michigan.
Right.
So it always could be worse. So
I think if Ohio State wins, it just feels like too much of destiny that they would go on and beat TCU. But I wanted to see Michigan Ohio State. I thought it would have been an exact replica of what the Bison are, what's happening to NDSU this Sunday.
Yeah, well, and that's a good segue there. Bison and SDSU are meeting down in Frisco, and you've made the trip as a player a few times. You know, what is that week kind of like? You know, from like you like practice is, I don't know if they start at Sunday or Monday, or you know, from can you take us through that week of like from like the Monday or Sunday or whenever you guys really start practicing? Because I'm guessing it's very similar to like a Super Bowl week for NFL teams, where that week before is really when everything, the game plan, everything is scouting, all of that is put in. And then the game week, it's more so it's a lot more walkthroughs. It's a lot more of the fine tuning of things. Is that kind of how that goes, or am I completely way off?
No, you're pretty close to how it goes. You know, you win usually on a Friday night in the Fargo Dome for the semifinals game. Coach Entz, if depending on how the performance was, how he feels, you get Saturday and Sunday off. You come back Monday, it's like a get your legs back under your game or practice. You're in what we call spiders. It's not hard shell pads. It's just like a protection over the chest. It's pretty much a sped up walkthrough is how I would describe it, getting through it. Tuesday, that next week after the semifinals really functions as any regular game week. Like you'd be playing that Saturday. Tuesday is a more physical practice. You just have to get some hits in, but that whole week it kind of ramps down towards the end. But it's just all about getting guys back healthy. We call it winter camp because it's like 3 weeks of fall camp. There's no school. You finish your finals that week of the semifinals usually, or you're getting into dead week, however that schedule works out. I've only been out for a year and I don't even remember how it works. But it's a lot of young guys getting some reps for some guys who may not be playing a lot in games, but who could if they're needed to step in. And that's usually just to give the old guys a break. Like I know Cody and Nash probably took, I don't know, probably Tuesday and Wednesday off. They're old guys. They're soft. I hope they're listening to this. But not gritty guys like you, like Kubis out from Dickinson. They're fighting through it. And then you get into the next week is usually Christmas break. You'll have usually 2 days before and a day after Christmas to get back home. That's nice. Just get a little break in, go see the family. Then you come back and it's a few practices, a little more physical. I think the older guys leading up to Frisco, you just need one like good pop practice. You need to get some hitting in, and then the rest is just getting your legs back under you. You'll fly out Wednesday. You'll either practice before you leave or practice when you get there. We did it both ways when I was there. And then you're down in Frisco. And it's like all the pageantry, all the fun stuff. You get like the banquets put on by the NCAA that are like recognizing everybody for their accomplishments and all this stuff. And then there's usually a competition between the two teams. We did 2 years of the Texas Barbecue Bowl or something like that. And it was at a place like Kingpins here in Fargo, a bunch of bowling alleys, arcades, stuff like that. And then the competition was bowling, and usually there's kids from a local charity there. It's a pretty cool experience. And then actually my last year when we played JMU, we did it at Topgolf. So some guys like went and did it, whatever, try to hit a ball 300 yards as you do when you're at Topgolf. And then there were 5 or 6 guys that got chosen for a team. And then their head pro went against Amy Olsen from LSU. And she just wiped the floor with him. It wasn't even close. Pitching, driving, she's an LPGA pro, so I'd expect that. But This was pretty cool and was kind of an omen for how the game was going to go that Saturday.
Yeah. Do those get chippy? Because I feel like I remember reading somewhere that at one of those when you guys played JMU, or maybe it was both, where there were some words exchanged during those two kind of events.
Yeah, you're honestly pretty separated during the whole thing, but until the competition, obviously. But it would have been friendly banter, if anything, like, nothing crazy, or nobody's throwing drinks or starting a food fight or anything like that. But I remember it was just kind of like it was when Kurt Segnetti is the head coach of JMU currently, right?
Yep.
Do you know who it was before that? He went to Eastern Carolina.
Mike Houston, I think, was his name.
Yes, and he was still the head coach my freshman year. And we were supposed to they made us dress bit formally for this banquet. You're supposed to look nice, wear a button-down shirt, a tie if you have one, nice shoes. And JMU showed up in just like their travel suits, sweatpants, and a zip jacket. And then, it was just kind of like, that's why you are the way you are, and that's why we are the way we are. And then, Easton Stick put on a clinic and sent them back home to Virginia.
Yeah, I remember that game. I remember watching that, and I was eating at the same time and that would have been like my fifth year senior class. So I knew a lot of those guys that were playing, and that was their last game, and I was just so nervous for them where I was like, I can't eat. I just got to watch this. I'm probably way more invested than I should, but I think it's different when you know those guys and you knew the work they put in, how much it meant, and that just to see them go out on top and was definitely cool to see.
And, there weren't a lot of times in our careers at NDSU where it felt like we were the less talented team, the team that wasn't supposed to win. And that game against JMU, they had some studs on that defense. I think 4 or 5 NFL guys, if I'm not correct. But it just felt like, what are we doing even being close in this game? They were crazy talented coming off of a national championship the year before.
Yeah, and that was a year too where it felt like from the word go, from week 0, that NDSU James Madison were on a collision course to meet in Frisco, and NDSU had the one hiccup. James Madison was undefeated at that point, and then NDSU came and they played the way they've Frisco was a home game and ended up out on top.
Yeah, and it's just it's a lot of fun. That's how I would describe the week at Frisco, that whole experience. You're with your buddies. There's more independence than a usual road trip because it's obviously longer. You're there from, Wednesday afternoon until Saturday, Sunday when you leave. But you just we stayed at the Omni Hotel in Frisco, which is where the Dallas Cowboys stay when they play home games. And it was just cool to there was a story about Easton Stick being in an elevator with Tyron Smith. Me and Nash were in the elevator with Cole Beasley. It's like Ezekiel Elliott was walking around. It was just pretty cool to get out there and have that experience. And obviously, what's going to happen on Saturday. And that's the coolest part. You just get excited more gradually as you get closer to Saturday.
Yeah, because my buddy, you would obviously know Mason, and he was because I'm a Cowboys fan. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but
you tell us.
Yeah, he texted me, and because he was in the elevator with Lael Collins and Tyron Smith at the same time.
Yeah,
and that would be sweet. I don't know if you've been following the LSU with their receiver. If you've heard that rumor floating around, I was
wondering.
were there any shenanigans like that when you were down in Frisco?
No, we knew better. It was almost like the coaching staff had eyes everywhere, man, because they do. I think the craziest we got was venturing over to a strip mall across the street. We weren't performing any LSU activities. I can tell you that much. At least I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a good thing. But you brought up winter camp. What are some of those those workouts like? Because every time NDSU, when they've taken the field in Frisco, they look like they look like a rejuvenated, they look like a fresher team. What are some of the things that the coaches and strength and conditioning staff do that make them look like that they're playing their best?
Yeah, and I've talked about this a bunch, but it's a developmental program, one, and two, more to that point, you're built to peak this weekend coming up, and it's a fine-tuned science. They've done it 10 times now, and they just have it down to as close to perfect as it possibly can be. Obviously, I don't need to mention Jim Kramer. Everybody knows the legend. If there's going to be a statue outside of the Fargo Dome one day, it should be the Bulldog. But it's a lot of it is just rest. Yeah, it's not. I think they're talking about like 35 days for the college football playoff teams since their last games, and it's just like that's too long where bodies start to degrade, and a little bit of it is if the old guys aren't practicing, they'll just do conditioning to keep it up, stay ready. But in the weight room, it doesn't slow down. You're still lifting heavy weights all the way up until kickoff. Obviously, once you get to Frisco, it's a little harder to find facilities and stuff like that. But excuse me, it's I don't know. It's almost like that Belichick method. How he has those guys like max squatting the week of the AFC divisional game. Same kind of thing. It's just you can't just because you've reached the top of the mountain, you want to climb over. It doesn't mean you can stop doing what you're doing, acting like game was normal. A little bit is taking some load off the heavy guy's legs or the old guy's legs, which is greatly appreciated when you get to that point of the season.
Yeah, for sure, and it's worked nine for 9. So we're hoping they're going to go 10 for 10 here, but. I have some stuff written down and like just go down offense, defense, and then I kind of have some general thoughts. But I think for NDSU offensively, I think Cam Miller has to play the best game of his career. He has yet to beat South Dakota State. Obviously the 1 for 12 is not going to cut it in this game. You're going to have to hit some big throws. Receivers are going to have to play the best game of their year, which they had success against the South Dakota State secondary. The questions at the running back as far as health, I don't know if you know have any status on that as far as Tamarick Williams or Kobe Johnson. I know it seems like Matt Entz is playing it pretty close to the vest as far as who's playing and who isn't.
Yeah. Nothing obviously that anybody else knows. I would just venture to say that those are two guys you're going to have to fight like hell to keep out of the football game. I would imagine we'll see Tamarick and Kobe back. I actually had a friend who was on the sideline send me a video of Kobe's finger. It did not look good. It looked bad. Like worse than anything I've ever seen on a football field with fingers. So.
Yeah, well, and that's, some finger injuries they're like the weirdest and like just the most unusual, like of how things happen. Like I had a buddy in high school. He got his finger stuck in a face mask, and the kid like yanked it off, and his I think it was his ring finger, and it goes it's like two knuckles now.
Yeah,
and it never like gotten like the swelling never went down. It's still that way.
Yeah, I dislocated a bunch of them. Obviously, just playing in the trenches, punching all the time. All of them kind of went back to normal. This one, if you can see, is a little wonky there. That's actually from wrestling in high school. It got stuck in the kid's headgear, and I snapped down, same kind of thing. And then it was just limp like this, laying to the side. Looked up in the stands and held it up to my parents, and I think my mom almost passed out. So, yeah, fingers are tough because you can't do anything about it. If it's like a torn ligament, obviously, you can have surgery. But most of the time, it's just like, tape them together, buddy. Nothing we can do.
Yeah, and then the receiver position, I'm trying to think. I'm drawing a blank of who got hurt. Was it Raja Nelson? Was he was hurt?
Yeah.
So we'll see if he is able to come back.
Everything seems fairly hopeful as far as those guys. when Coach Entz came out and talked about no broken bones or anything like that after the quarterfinal game, that's usually a good sign. So hopefully they can come back and, if I'm hurt and I'm on that borderline of something I could grind out or I'd have to sit out, this would be the game that would get me out. And hey, shoot me up with the good stuff. Let's go get this thing done.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing I have written down too is I think for NDSU, I don't know how. I think this is going to be a bit of a bloodbath. I think it's going to be hard sledding, especially running the ball. I think at some point they're going to have to hit on an explosive play, try to get like a 50-yard touchdown, something like off a flea flicker, something like that, or a deep pass like they hit in 17 where they got Darius Shepard got his only touchdown of the year that year. Because I think South Dakota State the last few times has done a good job of shutting down the NDSU run game. So there's going to need some explosive plays because I don't think they're going to be able to grind out drives throughout. And that's not a knock on NDSU. It's just, I think, a credit to South Dakota State and the defense they have.
Yeah. When I think about, how to win in the run game in this game, if you're NDSU, one, it's controlling movement from the defensive line. They have a lot of talented players, guys that can move side to side. If they're moving side to side, that means someone's out of the gap. And then you have to capitalize on that and hit your fits to your linebackers. Adam Bach's a heck of a player. I'm sure he's been one of the main guys that they're game planning around this week. It's just how well can you handle those down guys? And if you're moving them, how do you handle those second level linebackers? And I think you're spot on with a big explosive play being needed because this regular season game, they couldn't stop the running game in the first half. But what prevented NDSU from winning was having to lean on that and just smashing their head into a wall. They couldn't get anything going as far as an explosive play. And that's why they ended up stalling and doing nothing in the second half and losing a game that I think was as close to being won as a game can be.
Yeah, and I think if you ask anybody on the NDSU program, they're going to say that game is a game that they felt like they lost more than South Dakota State won. Mm-hmm. Revenge is for sure going to be on the mind, and I think and the other bullet point I have too is got to end every possession with a kick. But you talked about the game planning, and was in your time when you were a player, were the game plans for these games got bigger? Did you feel like they were simpler game plans where the coaching staff did a more focus on what NDSU did really well, where it was less for you guys to go out, less thinking for you guys, where all you guys had to do was go out and play and hit hard, or was it more complex compared to other games?
I think it's simpler, but not in the way most people would think. It's less shallow and less broad. It's more concise and deeper thought. So more plays in each concept that you think are going to work. I mean, they have 2 to 3 weeks to, figure out what they think. One, are we going to lean on power? Are we going to lean on zone, inside or outside? Are we going to look at pin pull stuff? How are we going to respond to this when they do this on defense? How are they going to respond to us when we do this on offense? It's just they have every minute detail figured out, and it really is just like getting handed the answers to a test. If you see this guy off the edge, pressure's coming across your face. It's remarkable. That's why they get paid the way they do to do what they do. But it's remarkable the amount of football knowledge the coaching staffs have. But, just to answer your question, I think it's not – obviously you've seen the wrinkles, the James Hendricks fake field goal, the reverse to a number 11 receiver that shouldn't be named is now playing for JMU. And then there's usually some I remember like a Christian Watson fly sweep, just things that – last year the wrinkle was Hunter Lipke's going to run through your face for 60 minutes, but
they didn't need anything fancy or cute there.
Yeah,
that game.
It's just like I said, it's less broad and it's just more concise. But where you might have 4 plays per concept, you'll have 9, and here's how they're going to respond to it when we line up this way, and here's what they're going to do mid-play when we line up this way. It's, like I said, it's getting handed the answers to the test, and it's really cool to see it take place on game day when you play in the Natty.
Yeah, and how much do you expect Cole Payton to have do you expect him to have a bit of an impact or have some serious playing time as an added wrinkle? Is that something that you could see them doing?
Yeah, I think it depends on health. I know he had a sprained ankle too. Was in a boot. I can't remember. It was either the Incarnate Word game or the game before. Yeah. I think it kind of depends on his availability. I would imagine after 4 or 5 weeks of, fairly easy practices for the young man that he'd be ready to go, chomping at the bit to go. But I think he's a game changer. The way guys are kind of gelling around that package and the way he's running the football, I would expect to see some Cole Payton, and I would like to see some Cole Payton just as a switch up. Cam has put on a clinic, almost turning into a Brock Jensen-like player where, he's going to fall forward. He's going to be 4 or 5, scoring 5 touchdowns, putting his team on the back of the Incarnate Word game and the run game. Obviously not the passing game. I'd like him to have a better performance, which obviously I think he will. But just switch it up a little bit. Cole Payton's a load. You need, short yardage. You need that explosive play that we're talking about. I think Cole Payton has that capability.
Yeah, well, and especially after the ugly turnover that he had in the regular season game, I think there's going to be some added motivation for him there as well. And hopefully if they do have him throw it, he's able to complete that pass. Realistically, it shouldn't have even been put in that spot, because if the ref doesn't try to make it about himself, NDSU goes up 28-7 there.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of moments where I really have to contain myself in the press boxes, because I obviously am a homer. I cheer for NDSU, and Big J journos don't like that when you're up there celebrating. But that was one I almost had to climb into the stands and start screaming at people. But I think Cole Payton bears this is all conjecture. I have no idea, but I would imagine he looks at that SDSU game and feels some blame to point at himself and say, hey, this loss was on me. And when guys think like that in the program, they have 2 options where they either shut down or they get better. And Cole Payton seems like the type of guy that's going to get better and learn from that moment. And I bet he's been using it as fuel, hoping that he gets another chance at the Jackrabbits. So I think that's definitely a wrinkle that they wouldn't expect. I would like to see the percentage numbers of how many times it's a run when Cole Payton is in. But, I think he's talented enough to go in and sling the football around too. And if you need a game breaker, I think Cole Payton could do it.
Yeah, and it was but yeah, for sure and I don't think you can be a part of the Bison program that if the first wave of adversity hits and you shut down and quit, you're probably not going to last too long in the NDSU program. So I'm with you there that he's definitely going to be chomping at the bit and focused and ready to redeem himself for the mistakes he made.
Yep.
And we can transition over to defense here, but for me it's containing Isaiah Davis. I think he's a good enough runner where he's going to get his. He might get over 100 yards, but you can't let the big run for him become a big run. And that goes for their entire offense. Their backup running back, who had a really good game against NDSU the first time around. Mark Gronowski seems to be using his legs. He did it a lot in that spring season against NDSU as well. Something NDSU has to be alert for is for his legs. Same thing. It's, and in general too, is just running to the ball, gang tackling, something that they've really shored up since that SDSU game. The defense has been playing a lot better since that game. Another part with Gronowski is get pressure, try to keep him in the pocket. Don't let him get out and extend plays. That's where the Yankee twins, guys like Tucker Kraft can get really dangerous, especially that. And then with those guys as well is tackling in space. They can't let them break tackles and let them go for, a 10-yard gain isn't a bad play. They can't let a 10-yard go to a 25 to a 35 where they're getting that yards after catch. And then on the defense with that is I think they're going to have to get 3+ sacks. I think Spencer Wage is going to have a big game. Those guys in the middle, Dutton Heffer, trying to think who else they have in there, get pressure, make that offensive line for South Dakota State a living hell, make them uncomfortable, force them into some mistakes. And then they're going to have to win the turnover battle. I think they're going to need 3+ turnovers, steal some possessions, and then be on the lookout for trick plays, because that's when SDSU seems to pull those out, is when they're playing the Bison.
Yeah, I agree with you on all fronts there. I think really the prototype that you look to follow against a quarterback like Gronowski are the teams that beat Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. Can you get home with 4? And do you have to drop an extra guy out of coverage because he's so accurate and can beat you with his arm to rush the passer, or can you trust those big guys up front, those top 4, to get home and wreak havoc? Because when he starts to lead the pocket and Tucker Kraft and the Yankee twins or the Yankee brothers start to improvise a little bit, that's when the 40, 50, 60-yard plays start to happen. I think it's just a little bit of pick your poison. Which one are you going to let beat you? Those splash plays from Gronowski to the weapons that I just mentioned? Or do you try to shore up, maybe load the box a little bit and try to stop Isaiah Davis, because he can be really dynamic as well? I've been really impressed with the fortitude of this NDSU defense and how they've improved, especially in the tackling and run fits. I said it from the beginning. People on Twitter didn't like to hear it, but it's the Bison. They're going to figure it out, and they have. It's been really impressive to see how those guys are stepping up to the challenge. And, they're playing lights out right now, one of the best defenses in the country. So the defensive matchups are the ones I'm really going to be looking forward to. Kind of have a general idea of what's going to happen on offense for the Bison, but, if the defense comes to play, it could be a long day for the Jackrabbits.
Yeah, and the other note I had down there was forcing them to kick field goals in the red zone. What's going to be some keys there that NDSU has to do? Because South Dakota State will move the ball. They're too talented not to. It's one of those things is, they practice too. But what's some things that NDSU is going to have to do to force South Dakota State to settle for field goals in the red zone and not get in the end zone?
Honestly, it's kind of the cliche answers, but how are you going to play the tight ends? They're all talented, not just Tucker Kraft, but he's an absolute weapon in the red zone. So how are you going to match up to him? Is that bringing Dom Davis and, keeping a linebacker off the field? Well, then you have to deal with, Dom Jones. I played with Dom Davis as well. But, do you bring in Dom Jones with his length and let him try to figure it out against Tucker Kraft? But then you open yourself up to Isaiah Davis in the run game. Do you bring in an extra linebacker? Do you get heavier when you get into the red area? I think obviously it changes once you get in from like a mid-20s to a low 10s and into the 5-yard line. But it's just how well you can tackle. Everybody do your 111th, hit your gap, be in the right place at the right time. And then I think it's honestly just I look at even 2 plays against JMU, same kind of situation. Was Josh Hayes' tackle on the bubble screen? Was it the Christensen brothers? What was their last name? The big guys, the 6'6", 6'5". Kids.
Yeah. I can't even think of their names, but I know the one.
Yeah. It was Riley.
Stapleton.
Stapleton, yes.
Yeah.
And Josh Hayes, young guy out there ready to play.
That was his first game, I believe.
Yeah.
Because the only reason he was in was because they had a couple. Jalen Allison and then
Jalen Allison tore his knee
Wimbush,
yep.
I believe, right? Were both out because they got hurt in the Sam Houston game. And that was his first extensive action. And he had to have gotten defensive player of the game, or was definitely in the discussion.
Mm-hmm. He took the bigger Stapleton, threw him into the other Stapleton, and made the tackle in the backfield. And then I think about when Jimmy Football, James Hendricks picks off Ben DiNucci in the red zone. Sometimes it's less about assignment and going to make a play. And I think those guys on Code Green have the reign to, hey, I tried to go make a play. We're either going to win on it or we're going to lose on it. And that's what makes the final game of the year fun.
Yeah, just trusting your instincts and going and just it's a credit to the kids that, watching film, understanding, seeing what's going to happen, and them going out and making the play. And it goes into their preparation where, that's a similar play to the Super Bowl 49 when Malcolm Butler, they talk about how they should have ran the ball, which is a discussion for another day of if Marshawn should have run it. But, they could argue it, but at the end of the day, Malcolm Butler made a hell of a play because he was so used to seeing it, and then it clicked back, and he went and made it, and Patriots won another Super Bowl. It's one of those things, and I think those are the kids. NDSU, it's going to be something like that. To win a game is seeing something on film and reacting and making the play, making that happen. That's a way to get one of those 3 turnovers that I said they'll need.
Yeah, I'd rather, live or die by being on my toes and sitting back on my heels for an incoming death. It's just like you said. And Malcolm Butler, his assignment would have been having him tackling the receiver 3 yards in the end zone, but he just trusted his gut, went and made a play, and that's kind of what just has been the narrative to most of NDSU's wins down in Frisco.
Yeah, for sure. And we've talked a lot about the JMU game back in 2017, and where I don't know if NDSU was the underdog or if they were the favorite, but it felt like NDSU was the underdog in their minds, especially, which I think that is the most dangerous NDSU team, is a team that is playing as the underdog with nothing to lose. We're the 9-time national champions. How dare you guys think anything less of us? Yep. And I think they're embracing it. They've got revenge on the mind. And I think that 2017 championship was one of their best wins. If NDSU comes away with a win against South Dakota State Sunday, this will by far be their best national championship, considering all the injuries they've had, all the transfer portal, all the kind of adversity they have faced through this year against the team and against a very talented SDSU team.
Yeah, just individually knowing those guys and what each of them has been through in their personal lives, going to school, dealing with another year after having another year of COVID eligibility to come back, just what that kind of strain on your mind and your body had. The COVID year was the reason I quit, to be honest with you. I could have played another year. I was just ready to be done after all the hoopla and jumping. It was just no fun. But it would have been. This will be really, really special when the Bison pull it off, just because I know what those guys have been through, fighting like hell to get through. Like you said, some key contributors leaving, people getting hurt constantly throughout the year. Everybody in the media, as they do, getting on and say, "Hey, the dynasty's over. The Bison are dead." And then until I see it, the Bison will never be dead, especially during this run, man. And what a special game to, cement your legacy as one of the most impressive team and coaching jobs that this program has ever seen.
Yeah, and right now, as we record this, and we're recording this Monday, the 2nd of January. But right now, when I looked, they were NDSU's 5-point underdog, by far the biggest underdog they've ever been. I believe at 19, James Madison was a 1.5 favorite.
Yep.
And so 5 points, and who knows, that line might jump up even higher. Which, well, I don't know if you're a gambler, Zach, but I am. I'm very tempted right now because I don't know if you've ever watched The Godfather, and I didn't play for the team, but there's one rule is that you never go against the family.
Absolutely. As long as this wait has been, and since the Incarnate Word win, I've just been like, how would I bet this game? I'm not a gambler. My money's hard enough to come by, so I don't like to spend it on that. But Bison +5, man, that feels like stealing house money, which is even crazier to think about. If it wasn't on a neutral site, if they were playing in Brookings this week, SDSU would be 8-point favorites.
Yep.
I know they usually factor in about a 3-point swing for the home team, home field advantage. But if I was a gambling man, don't listen to me for advice.
Yeah.
But I'd be taking Bison +5.
Yeah, for sure. And you've played in these NDSU, SDSU games. what are those games like? What are they? What's the week of practice? What's the week of practice like? What's the game like? Can you walk us through?
Obviously, I've never played them on a stage this big, but I played them a couple times in the regular season, obviously, and then a couple times in the playoffs. But it's almost like it's not like everybody's somber and quiet and so locked in and so focused. You can't play that way. You'll burn yourself out before you get to the game. But it's just like this razor sharp focus where everything has to be as close to perfect in the execution as possible, while keeping that same, trusting your instincts, going out and making a play, breaking on a ball that maybe you shouldn't be. But also, like I said, it's just finding that balance. You like to act like it's a nameless, faceless opponent every week, but it's not. You can say all you want, but when you're playing these guys in Frisco, I'd imagine the energy has been pretty ramped up the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then what are those games like? What are they like on the field? Is there like a mutual respect between each other, or is there a lot of chippiness? Is there a lot of jawing back and forth?
Well, I mean, NDSU plays with respect, but SDSU doesn't. You look back and blowing Levon Perry's knee out with a high-low. Yep. You look at the Christian Roseboom twist on Bruce Anderson's ankle, and there's countless other examples. The Bison don't go out. We do our business between the whistle. We're not doing any of that stuff, but I don't know if you've ever been like on the sideline or anything close to an NFL game.
Well, so I worked when I was going to NDSU. I worked as an officials host, so I was sitting on the sideline on SDSU sideline because the refs, the officials locker room, and then the visitors locker room is just across the hallway. So like I would always see them walk in, and when I was listening, when you guys had Ty Brooks on,
yep,
and you talked about how John Stiegelmeier, who was portrayed as this goody two shoes man of faith, just an all around class act guy, and then Ty Brooks goes on and he's talking about how he is the most notorious shit talker of any of the coaches, and like when I would see him, and obviously I'm not have any impact like because they played in 14, both games at the Dome. The first one, it was he walks in, he like shook my hand, he introduced himself to me, and I introduced myself to him. Nice, friendly guy. And when they came back in 14, and he knew my name, and he said, I said, welcome back. And he's like, well, it's good to be back. And that game too, and I'll talk about this game a little bit because that game, that felt like there was a different energy with South Dakota State that day, where they walk in, wasn't a word said. Those guys were just completely locked in, and then the game started, and NDSU jumps out right away. And the funny story with the officials is I don't know if you remember that playoff game, but the officiating, I think they came from the Patriot League.
Okay.
And they definitely weren't used to the physicalness of Valley football.
Sure.
And they were calling pass interferences left and right. I can remember on the Jumbotron them having Kleiman, and that was the first time I've ever seen Kleiman where he was just in a ref's face, just chewing their ass about it. And they were getting booed and booed and booed, and South Dakota State takes a late lead. And then Carson hits Erzendowski, and if you go back and watch it, there's a kid in a green polo in khakis jumping up and down, going nuts. It happened. That Erzendowski touchdown happened right in front of me, and I was going crazy.
Yeah.
And then
go ahead.
And then like the next week, with Brian Gordon and the director of football ops, I don't know if you ever had him. I feel like he might have left right before you.
Yeah, but BG was gone the year before me.
Okay, and he was saying, yeah, we watched that play, the Erzendowski touchdown, and you jumping up and down like over and over again. I thought it was hilarious, and I was like,
yeah,
all right, sweet. And that was one of SDSU's, to that point, that was probably the best team they had. They had a senior quarterback, Zenner. They had a 6'5" receiver who was also a senior. That was kind of one of the best receivers to that point. Jake Winicky was a freshman. Dallas Goedert, nobody even heard of at that point. He still didn't have that much of an impact on that game or the first or any of the game until that 16 season. But watching them, and then it was just watching all those guys like walk back, and it was just an incredible and I had the Jackrabbits crowd is right below me, and and then when and then they take the lead, and then it was like 50 seconds left, and Trey Dempsey picks it off, and you could just hear just nothing from that crowd. It was so awesome to see.
Yeah, I'm ready to see the Surrender Cobras and taste all the Jackrabbit tears this Sunday. It's just one, John Stiegelmeier is. I'll save my thoughts here, but if anybody who's listening, or if you end up in Fargo, I'll share some stories over a beer.
Can you share at least like one? Is there any that you can actually share?
I'll just speak in general. He's not what he portrays himself to be. He might be, as far as like his family life, and I'm sure he's a man of faith, and that means a lot to him. But the way he's treated recruits that have committed to NDSU, the way he's treated players at NDSU, it's just, it's all a front for what he really is. And I think there's a fine line between being competitive and having that alter ego and just kind of being a scumbag, where I think he crosses that sometimes. The SDSU NDSU games are so intense. One, because they're always close. Two, you're playing them because it means something. It's either the marker game or it's a playoff game. So it's a win or die, or win or keep the rock. And like I said, you were that close to the sideline too. I imagine you heard it. It's like listening to an NFL game. The way guys fly around, and there's a little bit of extra juice every time we play the Jackrabbits.
That's right, because there is a picture circling the Twitter sphere that of you in a SDSU jersey on a recruiting visit. So when you committed to NDSU, was there anything that he said to you specifically of choosing the Bison over the Jackrabbits?
No, actually, all my recruiting was handled by Jason Eck, another famous person that the Bison fans love. Now the head coach at Idaho, but he handled my recruiting, invited me down to Brookings, and then offered me that it was actually my first offer. But Steg wasn't there. I didn't get to meet him, and then didn't actually hear from him at all through the recruiting process until I went to camp. I think I met him for 5 minutes, and it's just kind of weird. It's like you were my first offer. You gave me a scholarship offer, and I haven't met the head coach yet. That just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And then went up to UND, got an offer from them, and when they offered, there was some pressure, I think, on the NDC coaching staff to take offering me a little bit more seriously, because I wasn't just going to walk on if I had offers from other schools. Got the NDSU offer, and USD offered. And once NDSU offered, I knew where I was going, but I played out like I was undecided. So, had to keep everybody on their toes. But like you said, I didn't hear from Steg at all, as far as I can remember, throughout the recruiting process.
That's crazy. I wonder if is that common? Because I feel like with like the NDSU coaches, and they're obviously going to have are going to have specific areas, but I feel like at least if there's an offer made to you, I feel like the head coach would normally be reaching out. Or is that common that a head coach doesn't really reach out to a guy that's offered?
Well, I think NDSU does a great job of the regionalization of who gets what states, but every coach on the coaching staff makes a concerted effort to reach out, which I think is really impressive. Atif Austin recruited southern states, Florida, some of those skill position states, and he sent me a text. He was a wide receivers coach. What the hell am I going to talk to Atif Austin for in the recruiting process? But they just want you to know that it's a family from day one once you step on campus. And even UND, I talk to Coach Schweigert all the time. He would invite me up to his office. We would talk all the time. He'd shoot me a text to just see how I was doing. Coach Kleiman reached out a bunch. They're just so busy, and for them to take time, it does show the effort and that they want you there. If the header is sending you a text.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that also just speaks to the success, because it does truly feel like a family of Bison. And even like, from a couple of years ago at state track, I was watching my sister down there, and one of the Trinity or Randy Hedberg was recruiting Caden Kuntz at the time, and I was kind of just walking with my dad, and Randy was talking to Caden's dad, and we stopped and talked, and we met, and I told him I went to NDSU, and he was asking me questions, and I told him the story I told you about the Erzendowski catch, and he talked about that play. He was like, that was, I think, Carson, when I look back at that, I think that was the best throw of his Bison career. We talked about that. And then AJ Blazik, we went to a coaches clinic down in Kansas City, and he was there, and head coach and we went up and we talked to him and talked about Jay. He took a picture with us, and
that's awesome.
Talked about that. So, which I guess that's a good way we can end it, is how many pride points do you still have a pride point necklace from when he was there?
I had 3 Bison teeth. That was whatever the I can't remember what the threshold was to get pride points for one tooth. But
I have it written down in a notebook here, because we actually instituted it this year within the Trinity program, and we saw great results with it too, as well.
Yeah, I think guys take that competitively. I know we did, because we'd fight over who got a pancake, like if it was a double team and stuff like that. I think it was 15 pride points, if I'm correct, to get one tooth. But I have 3 of them. I have them in a jar that I emptied out. It was like a bottle of Fish Hill pills. I dumped those out to put my pride point teeth in. I didn't play a lot. Obviously, people can go find that. But when I did get in, I did pride myself on being physical when I was in, and that usually equated to a decent amount of pride points. I hang my hat on. I outscored Cordell Volson and Dylan Radens in the Butler game. So,
oh, there you go. I was at that game, actually.
That game was a lot of fun, except for trying to snap on a baseball diamond. You have, when you're snapping, I played center, you have to like some downforce on the ball. You did that, and it went right over the quarterback's head if you tried to do that on sand. Yeah. So that took some adjusting.
I bet you the falling on the ground there too, that probably didn't feel too good either. I probably had to be like falling off your bike on a hot day.
Yeah, I think I was always a big kid, like not very fast playing baseball, so never really knew how to slide. It hurt even when you were accustomed for that, and now you're in full pads rolling around on dirt, scraping up your elbows and your arms. It didn't feel awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And last question is how insufferable will you be when NDSU pulls off the upset on Sunday?
Oh, I'm going to be belligerent, just so everybody is on the same page. You can mute me accordingly, or you can, I'm sure I'll go live on some sort of social media. But, I mean, if you're an SDSU fan and you lose to this Bison team, how do you ever show your face in public or say anything to me again? I might stop watching Bison football after this Sunday when they win. It'll never get better than beating SDSU in Frisco. But to answer your question, I have receipts. They're loaded up. We're ready to go, and they will be fired off when the Bison are victorious.
Oh yeah, for sure. I have a couple of things in the chamber. Got to win first, but I'll be on a golf course in Arizona like I was last year watching the game. So
not a bad deal.
No, it was great, and hopefully the same results happen again. And who knows, Zach? We might have to make this work. I know you're also a AWL, for pardon my take.
Absolutely.
And the after Coach K lost to UNC, That might be an idea we might have to do, is record one after this after the game, and that would be a lot of fun. But gotta take care of business first. So
yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I won't be able to walk on Monday. I already know that. I have that prepared in my brain. I'm not going to be worth anything on Monday. Don't try to bother me, win or lose. My voice will be gone. My fingers will be numb from tweeting incoherent nonsense for 60 minutes. And I'm so fired up, ready to go.
I am too. And just after recording this, and we'll be recording our regular podcast here on Wednesday and discussing it as well. But yeah, it's going to be just a slow process, I feel like, until Sunday. But thank you, Zach, for joining us. Thank you guys, everybody, for listening. Check us out on all of our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and we'll be back recording regardless of win or lose.
Love
and go Bison.
Go Bison.